Today, we are going to talk about oral rehabilitation, what it is, who it's for, and how nurses fit into the picture. Oral rehab is not about restoring hearing. That ship has sailed for these patients. It is about maximizing what communication function remains and keeping your patient safe in a world full of sounds they cannot hear. That distinction drives every clinical decision we'll cover today. Oral rehabilitation sits on 4 pillars, and you need to know all of them because they don't work in isolation. Pillar 1 is behavioral, auditory, and speech training, working on the cognitive side of communication. Pillar 2 is external amplification, hearing aids. Pillar 3 is surgical, implanted devices for when aids aren't enough. Pillar 4 is environmental support, hearing guide dogs. The goal of all 4 together is the same: maximize communication and safety for patients with permanent hearing loss. 3 components of behavioral training, and they are not interchangeable. Auditory training is pure active listening, intense cognitive focus on the speaker to extract meaning from degraded sound. Speech reading, what most people call lip reading, fills in the gaps visually. But here's the exam trap. It is inherently limited on its own. Nobody can lip read their way through a full conversation reliably. Speech training is the third gear. It's about preservation, actively protecting the communication skills the patient still has so they don't deteriorate further over time. Hearing aids amplify. That is their job. They make environmental sound and speech louder. But you need to plant this clinical reality firmly in your mind and your patient teaching. Amplification does not restore speech discrimination. Louder is not the same as clearer. A patient with significant sensorineural loss may get a hearing aid and still struggle to understand speech in a noisy room because the underlying neural processing is damaged. Manage that expectation before they even leave the office. The indication threshold is greater than 30 decibels loss in the 500 to 2000 Hz speech frequency range. 4 hearing aid styles, and style matters clinically because it affects what the patient can actually use. Behind the ear and in the ear are the most common. In the canal is more discreet, but harder for patients with dexterity issues to manage. Body-worn aids go on the torso, usually for severe loss or patients who physically cannot handle smaller devices. Feature options matter too. T-coil integration lets patients use loop systems in public spaces. Directional microphones help in noisy environments. Active feedback suppression stops the whistling, which brings us to the next slide. 3 things you own on this slide. First, common challenges: improper fit, feedback whistling, pain from ear molds, and poor initial device selection. These are reasons patients abandon their devices, and abandoned devices mean your patient is functionally deaf again. Second, care and maintenance, daily checking, routine ear mold cleaning. That is patient education you deliver. Third, and this is your clinical safety trigger: monitor for otitis externa. A foreign body sitting in the ear canal all day creates infection risk. Also watch for pressure injuries from poor fit. Your assessment includes the ear, not just the device. When hearing aids are not enough, you move to implanted devices. 3 categories on this matrix. Bone conduction devices bypass the outer and middle ear entirely. They transmit vibration through the skull directly to the cochlea, indicated for conductive hearing loss and chronic ear infections, where the canal can't tolerate a traditional aid. Middle ear implants use piezoelectric or electromagnetic technology and are indicated based on the specific middle ear pathology. Semi and fully implantable devices like the Vibrant Sound Bridge and Envoy Esteem go progressively further inside. Know the mechanism column. That's the exam material here. The Cochlear implant is the most significant surgical intervention in this entire deck, and it comes with critical constraints you must never miss. Mechanism: direct electrical stimulation of the auditory nerve. It bypasses the cochlea entirely and speaks directly to CN8, indicated for profound bilateral sensorineural hearing loss when hearing aids have failed. The benefits are real: improved speech recognition, social engagement, cognitive outcomes. But here is the safety alarm. Cochlear implant patients have internal magnets. MRI is a serious contraindication. Before any patient with a cochlear implant goes to imaging, you verify device compatibility. This is a patient safety issue, not a preference. Hearing guide dogs are clinical tools, not pets. Reframe that in your thinking right now. Their role is active environmental alerting: doorbells, smoke alarms, crying infants, ringing phones, approaching intruders. Every one of those sounds is a safety threat your patient cannot hear on their own. These dogs give independence back, and the legal protections are real. Access to public transport, restaurants, retail. Your patient education includes knowing these rights exist so they can advocate for themselves. A patient who leaves their hearing guide dog at home because someone told them it's not allowed has lost a critical safety tool. This closing slide is the synthesis. Technology alone, even a perfectly fitted cochlear implant, does not complete oral rehabilitation. Look at where the Venn diagram puts the patient. At the intersection of advanced technology, behavioral training, and environmental support, all three must be present. The human element on this slide is the most important nursing takeaway. Patient counseling and education are the key to success. The device gets them part of the way. Your teaching, your follow-up, your anticipatory guidance about challenges, maintenance, and expectations. That's what closes the gap between a device and a life.